All right, everybody. Welcome to the Florida Digital Humanities Consortium, FLDH, webinar series. This is our second webinar of the series. My name is Hélène Huette. I am the European Studies Librarian at the University of Florida, former chair of FLDH and organizer of the webinar series. Welcome this afternoon for a new webinar that I'm so excited to have. We have the pleasure today of hosting Dr. Siobhan May, who uses a pronoun she, her. She's a lecturer in the Manning College of Information and Computer Sciences at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Her research explores the intersections of fashion, narrative, and translation in literary traditions of the Black Atlantic. Her writing and research have appeared in Mutatis Mutandis, A Sex Salon, Kalalu, Caribbean Quarterly, and the Routledge Handbook on Translation, Feminism, and Gender, among other places. I would put a link to her profile in the chat in just a moment. I will also put in the chat a link to our webinar series. As you know, this is being recorded. The recording will be available on our YouTube page, and I also highly recommend that you look at the other webinars we'll be offering this month, all summer, in the fall, and even in 2024. But Dr. May, I'll let you get started.
Thank you so much, Ellen. So first, I want to say it is normally when I talk about this project, I do so with my collaborator and my dear friend, Jonathan Square, Dr. Jonathan Square. He could not be here today, a sort of a last minute change. So I'm representing us faithfully, which I'm so pleased to be here, and grateful to Hélène for organizing, and just very happy to be in conversation with all of you. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully that's pretty good. So I was just saying to Hélène when I was in the waiting room that I began putting together a PowerPoint sort of earlier this week, and was realizing I kept going back to our project's website. So what I'm going to do is actually just take you through the project today. And my hope is that you can also engage with it visually, given we're all on our own machines. Should you like to peruse sort of the site and various posts while I'm speaking, you should totally feel free to. So this is the first and the only PowerPoint slide that I have, and I'm hopeful that my sort of moving around isn't going to be too jolting for folks. But the name of this project is Rendering Revolution, Sartorial Approaches to Haitian History. And I mentioned at the beginning, you know, the ghost of my collaborator, Jonathan Square, is here. He and I founded this project together in 2020 or in 2019, but then the sort of pandemic happened. And we were, as many folks in the pandemic, thinking about rethinking a lot of things, including the way scholarship happens in academic spaces. And I had first learned of Jonathan's work in particular, which I'll show you his profile and recommend that you check out his scholarship. He was an early adopter of social media as he calls it a sort of democratizing force in intellectual and creative scholarly production. So he founded this great project called Fashioning the Self, which documents the sort of long history of the sort of relationship between the slavery system and fashion systems. And he published everything on Facebook, like the whole thing lived on Facebook. And I found myself, especially in a time like the early pandemic where I was online a lot, for this to be a sort of compelling space to think through how you communicate with audiences, how you engage with communities outside of institutional spaces. So that is sort of what brought us to social media in some ways, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So our project uses, and I'm about to jump to our website, so you'll see this. We use Instagram and Facebook as our main sort of social media platforms for dissemination of information. And I'll be talking about the various affordances and limitations of that, especially in the age of information and surveillance and yeah, and surveillance capitalism, I guess is the word I'm looking for in terms of how our data gets mined and used on proprietary software. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, but I want to center sort of our methods and what our project is, because I haven't really said anything about that yet. So here I go. I'm going to take us to the project. And all right. So here we are, and again, you can feel free to navigate here if you like on your own computer to sort of peruse as you want. As you can see on this landing page, which is just the main page of the website, you'll see what looks sort of like a quilted, sort of tiled aesthetic with lots of different visuals. And each one of these posts corresponds to an original Instagram post. It also has a Facebook counterpart as well. So before I dive into sort of the methods and sort of the reasoning behind the sort of setup of our page and the way that we share information and share scholarship and foster community in an online space, I'll just take you to the About page, because I still have not told you exactly what this project is about, but I'm going to. So my sense is that I'm just going to read you through our About page. And I'd also, visually, you can see there are, this is a bilingual presentation of information, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. Our approach to doing digital scholarship is one that we want to be not only inclusive, but also thinking through the various politics and paradigms that come with doing work bilingually in English and in Haitian Creole. And French features as well in many cases, but we are privileging English and Haitian Creole in this project. So Rendering Revolution, Sartorial Approaches to Haitian History is a queer, bilingual feminist experiment in digital interdisciplinary scholarship that uses the lens of fashion and material culture to trace the aesthetic, social, and political reverberations of the Haitian Revolution as a world historical moment. And then you'll see underneath here a translation into Haitian Creole, and I'm going to read that one aloud for just a moment, and then I'll move on. Approche sous sac à mode dans l'histoire haïtienne, c'est une expérience qui homosexuelle bilingue féministe non recherche qui gagne rapport à plusieurs domaines qui utilisent la mode à matériel culturel pour joindre beauté sociale et politique dans la révolution haïtienne dans tant qu'il y a un moment global qui historique. So excuse my horrible accent in Haitian Creole, which is a language that I've been learning for several years now and still working to get better in. So you'll notice there are already well, I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but translation, as many folks know, is never one-to-one. One area that we have had events on and have talked quite a bit about with folks in our network and other members of the community is how to translate queer into Haitian Creole. And if this is something folks are interested in, I can direct you to resources and a recording of an event that we held on that topic in particular. But I just wanted to flag that, and I can talk more about this a little bit later. But I'm going to continue, and I'm going to just read the text that's in Black here, the English for now. But of course, feel free to let your eyes wander over and absorb the Creole as well as I read. So by focusing on stories of self-fashioning that rarely receive attention in colonial archives, Rendering Revolution explores the many ways in which modern identities and concepts such as human rights were formed in relation to the legacy of slavery in the Americas. The materials produced, curated, and translated for this project focus on the activities of occluded figures in history, including women and members of the LGBTQI+ community. Drawing on Black feminist thought and transnational queer methodologies, Rendering Revolution generates a transhistorical, undisciplined archive that illustrates the importance of material culture in constructing diverse and often competing visions of freedom in the Atlantic world. And I just want to pause on this because you'll remember from our sort of main page, that sort of tiled or quilted aesthetic. We really appreciate that sort of the visual politics of that in terms of thinking about what a transhistorical, undisciplined, sort of plural or diverse, like many, sort of what like a plural form looks like, and what it means to sort of have these, like these barely seen seams between images. that sort of collage effect as a way of doing historical work or engaging with history. So I just wanted to highlight that. So in addition to presenting and analyzing colonial archives from Saint-Domingue, Rendering Revolution also considers the global afterlives of Haiti's revolutionary history by examining how contemporary artists and designers are engaging this legacy today. So we featured work by fashion designer and activist Stella Jean, artist Fabiola Jean-Louis, and the queer activism and style of Haitian drag king Mildred Dread Garrestant, among others. And I'll talk a little bit more about those today. The work of these artists challenges heteropatriarchal framings of the revolution as a project of liberation and opens up new avenues for understanding the history of the revolution in a diasporic context. And I'll talk about this, but our project not only engages with colonial archives, but is really interested in how contemporary designers in Haiti and in the diaspora are engaging with, rewriting, theorizing that history today. And that being part of a longer project. So our work is really interested in what designers and practitioners, artists, performers, how these histories of the Haitian Revolution are being represented in the role that material culture plays therein. So getting almost finished here, just two final sort of, I guess, pillars of our projects. One of the central goals of Rendering Revolution is to consider the question of representation as it relates specifically to Haiti, a Black nation that continues to be denigrated in North American media. So Haiti's ongoing struggle for sovereignty against the forces of white supremacist extractive capitalism is often framed through a dual rhetoric of victimhood and failure within news cycles, cultural production, and scholarship. So our project responds to the call from feminist performer, activist, scholar, Gina Athena Ulysse, for new narratives about Haiti that confront and challenge its typification in North American popular media. Finally, critical to Rendering Revolution's mission is the decolonization of knowledge production about Haiti, as Haitian Creole and speakers of Haitian Creole have not always been centered in the nation's histories and dominant narratives. Our goal is to translate all curated content into Haitian Creole, making Rendering Revolution a digital archive on Haitian history and culture that is accessible in Haitian Creole. And we've had some really interesting discussions about that, about bilingual scholarship as like a decolonial move. And I don't think that's not entirely without its own problems and like sets of contradictions. And so that's something we're still working through. And I think are looking forward to continuing to be in conversation with people about. So really welcome if any other folks working in bilingual, multilingual spaces, post-colonial spaces would be really interested to hear from you as well. So that is our about section. And briefly, I don't think I would be doing due diligence without taking you through the folks who make this project possible. And then I'll show you a couple of sample posts and conclude with some thoughts on doing this project in social media or like with social media platforms. So you've already know about me, and I've talked a little bit about my friend and collaborator, Jonathan Square. I can also drop at the end of this links to his DH work, which is, again, was in no small part for me, big inspiration for this project. So his project, Fashioning the Self, lives primarily on Facebook and Instagram as well. So highly recommend that project. Definitely check it out. You'll notice visually as well, we have the same, most of the, or all of the bios, I think, are bilingual. This is Danielle Dorville. She's a PhD candidate at Vanderbilt and a really wonderful translator on the project. She's also a Haitian studies scholar working in sort of transnational spaces, comparative spaces. So she's great. Nathan Dyes is another collaborator of ours. He's a literary historian, has translated quite a bit of Haitian literature. Totally recommend his work as well. And he has done a lot of good translation and content curation for the project. So and is also a great person too. So Nicole Wilson is also a digital humanities scholar, and she's a Haitian studies scholar who's based in the UK. She's done a lot of incredible work on the history of Marie-Louise Christophe, who was the Queen of Haiti, wife of Henri Christophe, and she has traced her journey in exile to the UK before she believed she passed away in Italy. Marie-Louise Christophe, I'll have to double check myself on that. In any case, Femme Rebelle is the project that Nicole runs, and it's all about focusing on the legacies and histories of women in the Haitian Revolution. And she has a pretty deep network and has done a lot of amazing work too. So highly recommend. Kai Marcel is our research assistant, really wonderful costume historian, very invested in histories of Black fashion, and is an amazing writer and researcher. We're going to look at one of their posts today. And then Dieu le met son petit frère is another active contributor to our project, great translator. He's also the founder of L'Exédition in Port-au-Prince, which is a publishing company. He's now in Paris, but he and his partner, publishing partner, Myrline Pierre, she also co-founded L'Exédition, are wonderful writers, researchers, and huge advocates of increasing access to Haitian literary production through publishing, translation, and the curation of literary journals as well. So these are our people. And I think I want to place an emphasis on showing you, oh, we're missing two as well. We have two other translators who are wonderful, Calafis and Nadège Charoubin, both professional translators from Haitian Creole into English and vice versa, English into Haitian Creole. So I think I wanted to make sure that you saw folks here just because the things that brought Jonathan and I to doing this project was a lot of fatigue around, we both come from academic disciplines that are like single author publications are really valued. And we were finding as we were doing interdisciplinary work that sort of notion or the dominance of like original authorship being single authorship was really hard and not something that felt as organic to us as the types of collaborations, like being in conversation with communities and having that be the way in which we learned together. So I just wanted to make sure that I showed who was working. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the project and show you some examples. I've shown you the about page and sort of what we do, but I want to make sure that you have a sense of that from engaging with the project as well. So as I've said, our project lives primarily on Instagram. And again, you can see that in the sort of tiled homepage here. And we share a range of content, as you can see as well, archival and contemporary scholarship, material designs, art, and I'm going to focus for the next 10 minutes or so just talking about our relationship as we're constructing it with colonial archives and how we engage with those materials in our project. So to do so, I want to show you, and here I just keep loading some posts. I want to show you this post right here. I'm going to go to the original post, and this is going to take me to Instagram. And for folks who aren't on social media, that's another thing we have to kind of figure out, because I can also appreciate why folks aren't on social media anymore too. Something we can talk about. So here is a very standard post for us. We have this visual, and then there's a text component. And I think this looks a little better on a phone. Here it looks pretty close up, but I think it's all there. The reason we lead with a visual has to do with, and many of you probably already are aware of this, has to do with the ways in which content gets consumed on these social media platforms. So you're much more likely to get engagement, and with a post, and by engagement, I mean like likes and comments and reshares, that type of thing. You're much more likely to get that when you include a visual that has a couple of different factors, but primarily like people in it, human subjects. That will often get much more attention than a post of something abstract or a landscape, or especially text. Nobody wants to like and subscribe to text. So this has all been a learning process. And again, through collaboration and through experience. So in any case, with this post, you'll see here we have a visual, and I'm going to talk about that visual. Here you'll see the way the text is represented, and it's represented as sort of a caption. That's how Instagram functions. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But I want to give you a sense of how we engage with colonial materials and why. And so this post is from a series that we did on fugitive slave advertisements. and which we return to pretty regularly in the project. So I'll read you this post and then talk to you a little bit about that. So Affiche Américaine was a colonial newsletter that we return to frequently at Rendering Revolution to better understand the relationship between materiality and revolution in the Atlantic world. So it's a collection and representation of largely French and landowning Creole interests. Affiche Américaine focuses on the material aspects of life in the colony, including the theft of property. Nearly each issue of Affiche includes a section titled Nègre Marron, in which slave owners can report when a person has stolen their freedom from bondage. One such advertisement from 1773, and that's this, reads, and we've translated it into English, a newly arrived nègre, Congo, aged 18 to 19 years old, height 5 feet 3 inches, a good figure, with a small face, eyes slightly red, and 2 teeth filed in the front, dressed in a chemise d'aile, marked R.A., wearing a blue scarf on the head, has escaped from Port-de-Paix. Those who encounter him are asked to stop him and to alert Monsieur Louis Fouché, négociant au Cap, or to Monsieur Barquin in Port-de-Paix. There will be a reward. End quote. So this advert describes a young man who at the time of stealing his freedom was wearing a blue headscarf and a chemise d'aile. Chemise d'aile was a new reference for us here at Rendering Revolution, so we checked in with Atlantic World material culture scholar Robert Duplessis to help us identify this item. So according to Duplessis' research, aile is a type of linen, typically white in color, made from hemp and exported to the colonies from Europe. And it's perhaps represented, you can see in the arms of this person here. And this is, I have an image credit at the end, but this is Agostino Brunias's representation of the linen market in Saint-Domingue. And Duplessis noted in his correspondence with us that the earliest reference he found to this type of linen dates to 1711, when aile was mentioned in an inventory as being material for the clothing of enslaved people. And I should add that I found aile a few years earlier in the cargo ship of La Profonde, bound from La Rochelle to les Îles de l'Amérique, as they wrote it. In that cargo, aile was the third largest single variety of linen listed, 21.25% of all textiles. Now, here's the thing, to be meta, here's the thing that we have to do pretty frequently in Instagram. We have to do continued in the comments. So this is Instagram really, and Facebook as well. It's a really short form burst style interactions. So those are rhetorical things that we have to think about. And as academics, Jonathan and I and many folks from our team, like, don't do a great job with that. But what it does create is this really interesting space for like interaction and like hesitation and sort of break in the flow of information, because here we have a few folks engaging with some of the content here, responding to it, and then the rest of the analysis sort of continues here. So Duplessis' research ultimately shows that aile was at one point one of the most affordable linens available in Saint-Domingue. And then the sort of conclusion of this post suggests that with the inclusion of material details relating to dress in these adverts, they're intended to serve as markers of enslavement. A reader can also draw on these details to imagine people in the context of their pursuit of freedom. So clothes are thus transitive things in the slavery archive, serving simultaneously as modes of identification for recapture and as critical expressions of identity and self-making. Though fashion's transitive or ephemeral nature has been linked to its denigration in popular thought as a serious form of human expression, fashion's transitivity is one of the conditions that makes the retelling of history possible, particularly one situated in the context of the transatlantic histories of fabric production, trade, and circulation. And here we have some image credits here. So this is a very typical post in that type of series. And again, I'm gonna, in a few minutes, talk about some more in detail about those affordances and sort of limitations of Instagram as a space for engaging in conversations and also sharing information. So I have, I'm gonna share a little bit as well in the spirit of talking about collaboration. Many issues of Affiche are helpfully digitized and cataloged in the Digital Library of the Caribbean, hosted by the University of Florida Libraries. So in our minds too, collaboration goes beyond who contributed to the post, who translated it, but also to the sources that we're able to access because of digitization. So we are as an open source archive, DLOC really allows us to engage in this work, and we feel really compelled to acknowledge that and talk about it too. Another thing that we wanted to do in this post that I think speaks to some of the, I don't know, values, I suppose, of how we do this is acknowledging that when we encountered this, we didn't know. We didn't know what this was. We did a lot of Googling. We did our best and with the tools that we had, but it was one of those moments where we knew we needed to reach out for help and ask other people. And I know in my own training and my own relationship with imposter syndrome and being an academic, that gesture is still really hard for me. So it's been really great we wanted to be open about the fact of what we don't know and what we want to talk about and what we want to learn more about. So we really wanted to sort of foreground our process of seeking out information for this that did involve asking other people when we just weren't sure. And I think that's another really important part of doing interdisciplinary work that maybe sometimes doesn't get talked about as much, but I find myself having a lot of blind spots and a lot of areas that I don't have expertise or knowledge in. And I believe that with with the types of approaches that we've incorporated in the project, asking for help, asking for insight, asking for feedback, correction, modification, because DH work can really evolve. And ephemerality is also something we talk a lot about. I feel like there's space for those kinds of conversations. So I do want to show you we don't just focus on the past. We do a lot of work on contemporary artists as well. So I want to show you a post from More Contemporary Post. This is another, I had pulled up just a few and I can talk more about these. This was another fugitive slave advertisement that we translated and analyzed of a wig maker. So that was a really great post to work on. But as I said, we don't just work with archives, although we have done a series for folks interested on head wrapping, bluing, we have done work on wig making, tribal scarification, head wrapping. So we've done several series on those things too, and I can point folks to that. But going to jump ahead a couple hundred years and talk about some of the folks whose work we featured who are engaging with Haiti's revolutionary history through fashion and material culture. So one of those folks is Stella Jean. Stella Jean is a prominent Haitian-Italian fashion designer who's been really active in the BLM movement in Italy specifically. Some of her recent collaborations include work with the brand Desigual. So we've featured her work several times. We've reached out to Stella Jean several times, but haven't heard from her, hoping to be in contact with her, because one of the things we like to do at the project is interview people and to talk to people about their practice. So this is a post that we did from April 21st, 2021. And this is a feature that we built based on an interview that we did with artist and designer David Baptiste, who's based in Brooklyn, New York. And so what we did was we had a conversation. We had looked at David's oeuvre and scheduled a conversation with him. And he was really someone who was very open to talking about their practice and also how it connected to their identity as a Haitian person. So this was a really exciting feature for us. And so I just wanted to show it and talk a little bit about David's work. So earlier this month, and this was in 2021, so not earlier this month, we had the pleasure of speaking with David Baptiste, and David is here. An image maker working at the intersections of textile art, set design, and photography. Baptiste was born in Port-au-Prince and immigrated with his family to Miami when he was 6 years old. Baptiste's richly transdisciplinary oeuvre explores the intersections of material culture and Haitian American identity. Baptiste's photographic series, and here I'll show you the series, and we were able to obtain these images with Baptiste's help and authorization. which is another thing we can also talk about, especially in the age of AI and big data. Like, where do you get your visuals from? How do you offer credit? Like, how do you do citation praxis and DH work when you're using social media? So all of these things are like kind of ongoing questions. But these are pictures from Baptiste's 2019 Haiti to Hood series. In this series, domestic space is shown as it is linked to Baptiste's own experience of immigration, specifically with regard to the accumulation and packaging of material goods for sale or for shipment back to Haiti. In the series, walls feel particularly present, whether they are textured by brushed concrete or draped in textile patterns such as gingham. Subjects appeared to be caught between the walls and in the middle of everyday activities, daydreaming, emerging from the shower, praying, talking on the phone. The relationship between the subject and the material objects that surround them produces a tense sort of intimacy in this series. When describing his photographic practice, Baptiste said that his first concern is always the set. And he says, with photography, I worry about the set, how I want to build a story, the relationship between the set and the narrative I want to convey, end quote. Baptiste brings a queer vision to images and tableaus that he creates, rethinking Black identities through the lens of his experience as a US-based in a US-based Haitian diaspora. For example, for a work in progress, he photographs his friends in a recreation of a classic barbershop poster, putting a femme twist on a traditionally masculine representation of Black aesthetics. And we don't have images from that series. That was still a work in progress. However, David was at the time working on a collaboration with Converse, so these self-portraits are from that series. So you can see him here. And we recently had the chance to reconnect with David this past fall, which was really, really great. So you can see again, folks engaging in the, well, I guess just this one person. I don't know how many likes. We got 50 likes on this. We try not to count it by the amount of likes, and many of our posts, it's been sort of interesting to see which ones get more engagement than others. But in any case, this is like, I think, a good example of how we're trying to engage with or connect with artists, designers, practitioners who are theorizing Haitian history in a really powerful way, and their own experience as well. So I also want to show you, in the spirit of that, this is a little less contemporary, late 20th century, but this is a feature that we've done on the queer activism and style of Haitian drag queen Mildred Dread Garristant. And this was a post that was created by our research assistant, Kai Marcel. And this post essentially sort of offers a brief biography of Garristant, who was a powerful queer activist, but whose story has often not been told in public ways, or was certainly not one that neither Jonathan nor I knew of. And so we sort of saw Garristant's story as, again, part of this longer extension of engaging with who are the occluded figures of Haitian revolutionary history, and what do we mean when we talk about history? You know, how far does that go? So I'll just read a little bit of this piece, and then I'm going to conclude with some thoughts to sort of tie these posts together. So Mildred Dread Garristant was a first-generation Haitian American performance artist, actress, educator, activist, healer, drag king, and self-described gender illusioning woman. End quote. Her distinct personal style, both on stage and off, represented her complex, multi-spirited identity. Her onstage act as Dread consisted of numerous back-to-back costume changes and reveals, which were performed like a kind of gender-bending striptease. Blending eroticism, stand-up comedy, physical humor, monologue, dance, poetry, and cultural history, she attempted to shock, seduce, entertain, and educate her audiences by revealing the inherent fluidity of gender and the fallacy of patriarchal misogyny. In her act, The Dread Love Experience, she embodied and impersonated icons of Black hypermasculinity, from Shaft to Isaac Hayes to Sean Diddy Combs. Inherent to her performance was a humorous yet sound critique of cis-normativity and toxic masculinity, in which her appropriation of sartorial and corporeal signifiers of masculinity, such as her shaved head, her applied facial hair, her oversized leather jacket, men's suit, and top hat, also allowed her to appropriate, even if only temporarily, its hegemonic power. So this is, and just below you'll see the translation into Haitian Creole. That's typically, we've now translated enough content where we'll publish in Haitian Creole first and then include the English translation. It really varies from post to post and who's available for translation work. That's another part of this project that I don't necessarily am focusing on in this, but would love to talk about for folks who are doing bilingual work, thinking about the value of translation and how that is also a practice that is historically devalued and also invisibilized. So we've been working on a few ways to think through what that means in terms of our project, in terms of how we remunerate people, and in terms of how we make their contributions visible. In any case, I wanted to make sure I shared with you a few of these examples of what our project does. And I'll just sort of take you back to our homepage for some final thoughts. And thank you so much for listening and for your patience as I take you maybe somewhat haphazardly through our website, but I hope you've had a moment to peruse as well. So I'll talk a little bit about our use of Instagram and what that means right now in terms of how we're thinking about it. So our use of Instagram as a platform for engaging in public-facing scholarship on colonial Haiti, Saint-Domingue, and on sort of afterlives, revolutionary afterlives, in terms of engagements from artists, designers, performers in Haiti and its diaspora. It is a double-edged sword, as is largely the experience for most users of social media. As a social media platform, Instagram was originally a forerunner in cultivating a popular sense of digital aesthetics and visual curation among users. So it's a very visual forward type of platform. Instagram's emphasis on visual content as its central form of data currency is reflected in the sort of tiled presentation of information here. And that serves as like the given feed of an account. So for anyone who has an Instagram account, you'll sort of see the feed of images that appears as you scroll. So the presentation of information here and access to links does sort of replicate that in some way. It pulls on those aesthetics. So what this creates for us, or in our mind, is sort of a collage experience for visitors to our account who will see, for example, a new materialist analysis of a runaway slave advertisement from Haiti's colonial newsletter, Les Affiches, directly next to, with no transition, an interview with a contemporary fashion designer and visual artist such as Marielle Plaisir or David Baptiste, as I showed you. So our account on Instagram permits a sort of stitching of content and an emphasis on the plurality and the imperfection of seams and of time in some ways. These, the sort of seams between these spaces are something that Jonathan and I spend a lot of time thinking about, because there are connections between everything that is here, yet just looking at it, it would seem like many, many sort of disparate points or disparate visuals. So content visibility on Instagram is closely linked, as I mentioned, to user engagement, in which posts and their promotion are contingent upon a like and subscribe economy, information economy. So these conditions, and they determine the reach and volume of information diffusion, reflect how markets, trade, and distribution frameworks continue to play a significant role in shaping the various forms that public-facing scholarship can take. And Jonathan often uses the term the sort of democratizing potential of social media, which of course has affordances and limitations as well. So part of this is, of course, is a result of how applications such as Instagram are designed. The purpose of an information feed is to facilitate the sustained consumption of content. So in other words, the experience sort of scrolling, right? But we know that users are not going to spend much time on a given post. And maybe you can see from some of these, the various, in terms of how many folks liked it, or whether that's a metric to think through engagement. Those are questions we have. But we do know that users are not going to spend much time on a given post, sometimes no more than a second. And thus we use or try to use, and this is one of our challenges, a short form style of information presentation, typically about 200 words per visual. So the short form nature of textual production via Instagram offers affordances and limitations in terms of producing and circulating counter histories. So while our posts often cut sort of straight to the like thesis, so to speak, there's less space for contextual framing. And thus we rely on the knowledge and experiences our various audience members bring to their engagement with our content, which is why sometimes you'll see really wide range of comments, because people are really bringing their own perspectives, their own investments to how they arrive at this very short form sort of burst-like content. So in this way, we seek to offer narratives about the Haitian Revolution that are typically marginalized and not broadly circulated. Our use of Instagram also means accommodating its constraints in terms of how content can be shared with users, and of course, where our data is stored, who owns our data, who gets to use it, and why. And there's a sort of proprietary set of questions that comes up. So that's what I had. We're thrilled. We just had a review of Rendering Revolution come out in Archipelagos by Marlene Guénère. So happy to share the link to that too. We were thrilled. We really admire Archipelagos as a project as well. But that's sort of what I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening, for sticking with me through the presentation. I really appreciate it. So just so happy to share this moment with you. Thank you.